Well, hello, Nate.
Hello, Greg. Hello, everybody out on the internet. It's time once again for What's This Bird Live. We're back 2 weeks after our last one. We made it. We hit our schedule, Greg. We don't always do that, but we did it this
That's
time
true.
because we care about talking birds with all of y'all so very much. Welcome everybody. It's almost February. We're almost to the end of January. I'm Nate. That's Greg. We're here to talk birds, birding, bird ID, all the stuff that people are clamoring for on the internets and elsewhere. If you're new to ABA's What's This Bird Live, um, well, we'll start from the beginning. ABA means American Birding Association. We are a bird watching organization. Some might say the preeminent birding organization in the North American
I certainly would.
continent. Sure. I know the continent of North America is always a little bit contested, but all of it. We'll go all the way down to Panama. Um, what the ABA does is we host a bunch of groups on Facebook, and that's one of the places where we talk birds and bird ID. Folks can take photos of birds that they see around their house, around their birding escapades, and they can
Yep.
throw them up on the internets. And our friendly community of birders and moderators and birding moderators will help them identify those birds to the best of our ability. Every once in a while, we like to grab a few of those photos that people have had been discussing, and we'll walk you through them at a little more leisurely pace here on What's This Bird Live. Did I get it all? Did I do it all? Hello, everybody. Coming online.
You're pretty close. You're pretty close. The only thing I would
I got
add,
almost all of it. I think I got almost all of it.
the only thing I would add is that Nate is watching the comments in YouTube. I am watching the comments in Facebook.
Oh
So
yeah,
if you've
there's
got
that
something
part.
you want to say, a question you want to ask, shout out, say howdy. We're here, and we will try to get to your questions and comments. And also concerning the What's This Bird group, we also have ABA community for ABA members,
Oh
which
yeah, there's that.
yes, which also has a What's This Bird group that is. I, we all know what goes on with Facebook, and it's by birders for birders, and yeah. So you can also log in there, and we will discuss birds there as well. So Nate, how is it in North Carolina?
It's warmed up quite a bit since the last time we talked. Last time the polar vortex was pushing some very cold weather down into our area. I was hoping that we might get some, unusual ducks or diving duck stuff from further north that might come down when the weather gets cold. It didn't really happen. We only had like a few days of super cold weather, and then it heated up back again to our typical moderate southeastern winter, late winter, early spring. And so usually we have to get a couple weeks of really cold stuff for the birds to kind of stick around. I think they stuck it
Yeah,
out up north, but for the most part, yeah, it's warm. It's spring's coming. I got birds
yeah,
singing. I was out back, and I heard Carolina wrens singing and pine warblers, and so
yeah. It was almost
winter's
50.
almost over down here.
It was almost 50 here yesterday, and we had cardinals and robins singing. And today it's low 40s, I think, and pouring rain. So,
Yeah,
and
when
the
it gets
ground is
warm, it
all
gets wet.
frozen, so the flooding is happening. Um, but anyways, as I said, you guys, if you've got something to say in the comments there, we are watching it, and we'd love to hear from you. Um, so go ahead and hit those comments. Um, I think this is kind of a
Hey,
short.
we got some hellos.
Oh, okay.
Hey to all the folks watching on YouTube, Marsha Balestri, Birding AP Benson from New York, Manny Majorans from Indianapolis, Jimbo from Manitoba coming in. Hello to our friends up north. Andrew Cambar from DC, R.I. Davio from NYC, Las Cruces, New Mexico, Nicole P, Altameda, California. Hello from the UK, CSY. We got folks watching all the way on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, where it is much later than it is now. It's early evening there. I'm excited to spend our early afternoon slash early evening with all y'all here.
We've
Madrid,
got
Chrissy Esmond in Madrid.
We've got we've
Columbus,
got
Ohio,
Mia.
Holly Minor.
Mia.
We
It
have a
was
lot of friends.
Facebook was
Our
awfully
explosive.
quiet, but we've got Mia in saying hi, and
Oh,
Hannah
Mia's always there.
from Minnesota.
Hello, everybody.
So
It's excited. I hope that I don't know if spring is on its way and where you are. Well, it is weird to say here at the on the tail end of January. It's not too abnormal in the southeast, but
Minnesota,
yeah, it's coming.
the land of the common loon, our
Land of the common
2025
loon.
bird of the
That's
year.
right. 2025 still feels weird to say 2025.
And we've got another hello from Minnesota.
Intrepid
From,
Blonde asks, haven't been here in a while.
Slang.
Did we?
What's that?
Did we used to do this on Facebook? Now only on YouTube. We are still on Facebook and YouTube.
Yep.
Though I do have to say, I think the YouTube is a bit more action than Facebook these days. They haven't stifled us. We're spitting too many hot bird takes here for
guess.
Facebook to handle. So they're trying to
Meta's put the clamp on us
reach.
for bird stuff.
That's right. They don't want
yes.
you to know the difference between Cooper's hawk and sharp-shinned hawk.
But
we do.
Don't.
So we're
They
coming
don't.
at you
Yeah.
wherever. Yeah. Mark Zuckerberg, take that. Wants you to be confused about sparrows.
But yes, you can
dare
go
him.
to the ABA page, which is facebook.com/birders, and you will find a link to this live video there. And I will say, all things taken into consideration, that the YouTube feed is often much less glitchy and troublesome than the Facebook feed.
So if you want to know when we're going to do these, go ahead and follow us, or follow us on YouTube. It might be the easiest way to keep in touch. You can also join the ABA's or get on the ABA's newsletter. Flight calls. You can find that at aba.org. Scroll down to the bottom. You can get on there, and we'll let you know when we're going to be doing this. If we surprise you every once in a while, we try to do this every 2 weeks. If we don't, then usually we'll let you know. Chris from Ontario. Hello. George Munoz loved the dinosaur episode of the podcast. So did I. That was a lot of fun. Don't always get to talk dinosaurs on the podcast.
Speaking of the podcast, yeah. Oh, like you said, you got a little funkiness under your window there, but yeah, I'm not going to try to clean that up right now because it'll probably blow something up.
Next time.
But yes, out yesterday is this month in birding, with Rebecca Heisman, Dexter Patterson, and Sarah Swanson. Nate, what were you guys talking about?
We talked about all sorts of stuff. So that This Month in Birding is a monthly roundtable discussion where I bring in some birding friends. It's usually a different crew every month, and we just kind of grab whatever the newest science or newest media attention that of birds or just bird news in general, and we kind of talk about it and discuss it. This time we talked about vultures. We talked about these birds, this study that is trying to coat seeds in ivermectin, and then the birds eat it, and it makes their blood toxic to mosquitoes as a way to limit the spread of West Nile virus, which is actually sort of fascinating. We talked about cold weather birding tips, although that those tips are becoming rapidly outdated as the temperature keeps going up. We had a great time. Rebecca, Dex, and Sarah are a super panel. A lot of fun to talk birds with them. Sarah emailed me and said that she needs to send a different headshot because that one's from like 10 years ago. But other than that, 2 thumbs up.
Right on.
It's great conversation.
Yeah, right on. Hannah in Minnesota says it went from -40 to +30 in the last week in Minnesota.
Wow, that's a 70-degree swing. That's wild.
Yeah, and I think we've got another big cold snap on the way. And Minnesota, by the way,
50-degree swing.
It's kind of, I mean, on social media, it's been discussed, but Minnesota is having a banner owl year, one of the best in quite
the whole
a long time.
The whole part of Minnesota is certainly one of the famous places for ABA birders because of Sax-Sim Bog, but that whole region, Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Dakotas, Manitoba, Ontario, like all those places have been having just incredible owl luck this year. Not just snowies and great grays, but cool ones like boreal. Well, they're all cool.
Ridiculous
boreal
numbers
owl
of boreal
kind of a
owl.
tough one.
And boreal owl is one of the toughest birds to get in the lower 48. And
it's a difficult bird.
And February is typically the best time for them Although January has been, like I said, off the hook fantastic.
They start making noises then, right? I
So
mean, they're one of those owls that likes to sit tight and not move, and you can be 3 feet from them and not even know it. But
right. But, I was surprised when I saw my lifer boreal owl. I was really shocked because I expected them to be like a big saw-whet owl, like the next size up of a saw-whet owl. And they're not. They're miniature hawk owls. And
oh, really? Is that
I
right?
watched
Yeah,
it.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
I watched it, feeding during the day, and it was catching voles and caching them up in the trees.
That's
And it really reminded me of a northern hawk owl, and not at all of like a saw-whet owl. And along the north shore of Lake Superior, like from Duluth north, is one of the very best places when they're on the move. So, yeah, if you guys want to see and get just killer views of boreal owl, get to Minnesota in the next 3 weeks, because you'll get, like you said, there's great grays, there's a few hawk owls around, there's snowies everywhere. And eBird has basically turned off the spigot on information on all owls in Minnesota. So don't look to eBird for like where the birds are, because you're not going to get any data there.
Yeah, I have not seen boreal owl, as you might expect from someone that has lived in the southern tier of the United States their entire life. Yeah, that's not a bird. I did get to see a northern hawk owl though many years ago in New Hampshire. One was teed up there, and they are very active owls, especially during the day. That's a cool one for sure.
We got the boss Wayne in the house saying that he needs a boreal owl, and well, now is the
don't we all?
Don't we all?
Yeah,
now is the time to do it. Well, I guess we've prattled on quite a bit here. We can get into the birds, and we've got some good ones. This first one comes from Pennsylvania, and this actually is a pretty common sight in the wintertime in the northern tier of states where you get snow, and that is a big bird of prey on roadkill. It happens a lot, and we get all kinds of hawks getting on roadkill. So what are you seeing here, Nate?
Well, I'm struck by the size of the body of this bird in particular. I mean, this is a very large body. I'm like, even though proportion actual size is kind of a difficult thing to determine,
Sure.
particularly from photos. This is clearly like a large bodied bird with a relatively small head, which is a sort of when I think of the beautying raptors, the buteo hawks. They are kind of larger bodied and shouldery, but they tend to have large kind of heads too, proportionally.
Right.
So, looking at this bird, I definitely get the sense of a very large raptor, which sort of narrows things down a little bit. Pretty much all dark, a lot of dark on there, but it's kind of got an interesting pale spot on the back of the head. This says eagle to me, Greg. So
I would
are we
agree.
Going to talk through bald versus golden?
That's what we're going to do. And this is a pretty straightforward ID, but this is one of the birds, the conundrums, that we get every winter on What's This Bird. And so let's talk through bald versus golden eagle. And so there we've got the two photos of our mystery bird on the left, and we have adult or near adult golden eagle on top, and this is a juvenile or first year bald eagle on the bottom. And really the only time that bald eagle would be confused with golden eagle is in the first and maybe into the second year of life, and after that there's really no way to confuse it. But when they're both all dark like this, it can be tricky, because people, I see all the time people write golden eagle is the largest raptor in the world, and golden eagle is, well, no, golden and bald are so close in size that there is overlap between males and females, and you really can't determine that in the field. I mean, they're not.
Yeah, for sure.
They're just not bigger.
Yeah, but they are shaped differently, which is I
They
think
are
is sort of
shaped
what gives
differently.
people the impression that they one might be bigger than the other. And bald
Yep.
eagle, at least to me, even though like on a physical size, may not be as long winged, as long front to back as a golden eagle is, it feels like a much larger bird. And part of that is because they've got this massive head and especially
Yeah.
this absolutely massive bill. So bald eagle is one of the fish eagles. There's
Yeah.
fish eagles all around the world. Bald eagle is our North American version of it. They have just a monster bill for tearing open fish, whereas golden eagle is essentially more like a large buteo.
Correct.
They have a smaller bill. They're rodent eaters primarily, or roadkill eaters in this case, as most raptors will do in the winter. So they have smaller feet, smaller bill, smaller head, and funnily enough, like a lot of times, especially on the if you see these birds in flight, the bird that you're most likely to confuse a bald eagle for is a turkey vulture because they both
Yeah.
have similarly kind of long wings that are kind of narrowed at the tip and a very small looking head compared to a bald eagle. When you see this bird in flight, it's got this absolutely massive head um, that stands out at a huge distance. But that
Yeah. And
this
I
bird
think
looks
you
like
can.
a golden to me for a lot of reasons, namely because I just
Yes.
do not see that massive bill on the front of that bird as you would expect to see in a bald eagle.
No, it does not have the massive bill. It's got the golden nape, which golden eagle pretty much has in all plumages.
At least a
Um,
little bit, yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's you can see this golden eagle at the top is not a fully adult bird, but it still
Mhm.
has some of the gold feathering on the nape. We can see pretty clearly on the pictures on the left how the bird has feathering going all the way down to the toes,
Mhm.
which is something that differentiates golden from bald.
Golden from Balden. Yep.
Yes,
Gold from
gold
Bald,
from
Balden from
bald.
Golden.
Jeez. Um, but yes, the tarsi are unfeathered. So you get a little bit of yellow short socks on
Hmm.
bald eagle, but really the bill size and head size when the birds are perched are very different. Once you get a feel for it, it's really not all that difficult. And when they're flying, look at the way that the secondaries, the bottom edge of the wing, kind of belly
Bulgy.
out, and they
Yeah.
they bulge out there in a way that bald eagle doesn't. And as Nate, as you sort of alluded to, bald eagle tends to fly in a very kind of slight or light dihedral, and it tends to rock just a little bit,
You mean
and is
Golden
very
Eagle?
our golden eagle. Jeez, I keep
Yeah.
doing that.
I know. It's easy. Yeah.
I'm sorry. No,
Yeah,
no,
you're
that's
right.
just
No, Golden Eagle
that is
has a
dyslexia
shallow
in
V and they
action.
rock. They do look, especially at a distance. They
They
can look
look
very
like
much
turkey vultures.
like a turkey vulture. First
Golden
Golden Eagle I ever
eagles,
saw in Virginia was at a hawk watch, and it was very distant.
yeah,
And it looks like a turkey vulture until it was a young bird, so it had a lot of
yeah,
white in the tail, and so it banks, and you see all the white in the tail, and you instantly know it's a golden eagle. But like they have that dihedral, they have that kind of long wings, they have that kind of rocking, and they have the small head.
yeah.
It does look very turkey vulture at a distance for sure.
And a couple other things. Bald eagle, um, young birds, when they don't have the characteristic white head and white tail, they almost always. I've never seen a picture of one that doesn't have some white in
Yeah,
the wing lining, the forward edge
yeah,
of the
kind of
under
specular.
part of
Yep.
the wing. Whereas in golden eagle, it's opposite. Really, the only place you're going to
Hmm.
see white is in the secondaries and inner primaries, and the wing linings are dark. So it's kind of opposite. And a third thing that's really subtle, but it's there, is look at the kind of buffy brown, kind of almost goldenish undertail coverts that you can see in the picture
Mm.
on the lower left of the bird lifting off, that you can also see in the flight picture. That's something that the bird's got to be right on top of you to make out. But
Hmm.
bald eagle is, when they're dark all the way down.
Yeah. A couple other things to note. There's an interesting conversation in YouTube that I was going
Yes.
to answer the question, but like other people jumped in there. Someone asked, Thomas asked, are there white-tailed eagles in the U.S.? The answer is generally no, but there are records of white-tailed eagle, particularly in Western Alaska.
Yes.
And there was one recent record from San Francisco, which was
Yeah.
fascinating
I
first
saw
record
one when I
from
was up in the
for-
Pribilofs.
yeah.
I got
Yeah,
very
that I
lucky.
mean they show up. There have been some that have actually stuck around for a very long time, like multiple years
Yeah.
on St. Paul.
And
But they're infrequent for sure.
I believe that Michigan has a record of white-tailed eagle
Mm.
as well.
Chris Ortega knows New York. Is it New York? I'm not exactly sure. Sometimes, this is sometimes those records that do not get accepted officially kind of fall into the ether and like end up in, birder myth and legend. I think
Yeah.
that might be one that's sort of like that. It would not shock me. Like, it's not impossible. But heck, if a stellar sea eagle can turn up in Newfoundland, like a white-tailed eagle could absolutely get across the
Stellar
continent. It would
sea
be an
eagle in
easy bird to
Texas.
miss. Yeah, yeah, there you go. Like these are big birds. They definitely get around. White-tailed eagle
Yeah.
is very widely distributed across Asia, although it is a bird of note in the United Kingdom. I think they introduced them back into
Yeah.
the UK relatively recently in the last decade or so. They're
I will
breeding
I will
again.
say that when I
They were
saw the
extirpated.
when I saw the white-tailed eagle on St. Paul,
Hmm.
I was struck by how different it is from a bald eagle.
From a bald eagle,
Um,
really.
it has those really deep um, uh, bulging secondaries that you see in a
Yeah,
golden eagle,
right.
but
That's
even kind of
broader
more.
wings. Yeah.
And the tail is more wedge shaped
Yeah.
than bald eagle, and it gives a very different impression.
Hmm.
And we were very lucky to have the bird flying by very low, where we could see the top and the undersides, and
That's nice.
yeah, it was a very
Yeah,
cool
I mean, if we're
experience. But
talking worldwide representatives of these eagle groups, golden eagle is the North American version of a very widespread old world family
yeah,
of Aquila eagles, of which there are many, many, many in Asia, Africa, Europe, and they're all very, very similar. Golden eagle's there. Golden eagle is whole Arctic, so it's found
yeah.
all the way across the northern hemisphere. But there's a bunch of other very, very similar Aquila eagles that are very difficult IDs. We're fortunate that we only have though only one other large brown eagle that is relatively simple compared to those.
I
I
don't know if
remember
it's fortunate, but it makes it easy.
it makes it easy.
I mean, when it comes to birds,
I remember
my
my head
more
swimming
is better.
when I was looking at those old world Aquilas. They are very, very difficult.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Florida.
It's a neon Miami vice bird here,
Yeah, that's a
Greg.
yeah, that's a colorful thing. Um, so it's a duck. It's a
For sure. Yeah.
It's a purple
We
duck.
don't have any. We don't have any ducks this color in the ABA area, or anywhere around the world.
I don't know that
if
there
I
are any.
disagree.
I mean, the closest is wood duck, and that's not even close.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, okay, it's not a duck, folks. You can take a look at that bill. It doesn't have the kind of the flat, broad-based bill that you would, or a broad-tipped bill that you would expect to see on
Right.
a duck. Most ducks, except for mergansers. It's got kind of a triangle-shaped bill that kind of extends up onto the forehead. That's not duck-like. But man, that teal, that purple, that is a bird it would be at home on in an 80s discotheque. It is not a bird that we would see. I tell you, my gut reaction whenever I see a purplish bird that comes from Florida is purple gallinule, but that cannot be your assumption anymore. There are
Not
other largish purpley raily birds in Florida these days.
there are, and yeah. So in quite a bit of Florida now, we have two of these birds to deal with that are purple Rallidae, that gallinules and gallinule like birds out in the marshes and swamps. And so we've got gray-headed swamphen and purple gallinule, and this one, just going by the color pattern, is obviously a gray-headed swamphen. Um, and
Yeah, for sure. Purple gallinule also, it's got the thing on the forehead shield
right,
is a different color. It's kind of more of a purple, it's almost like a lavender sometimes in a purple gallinule. It's bright red in a gray-headed swamphen. Purple gallinule's got that candy corn bill with the yellow tip. Great-headed swamphen is all red.
yep,
The purple and green are kind of different shades. The legs are quite different if you can get a look at the legs. Purple
yep.
gallinule has these garish yellow legs that stand out at a very long distance, whereas gray-headed swamphen does not. And also, I don't see purple gallinule swimming like
I
this. I
was
mean,
gonna go there. Yep.
this is like a common moorhen type thing.
Yep.
You're swimming around like a duck. Purple gallinule is not. I mean, it can and does from time to
Sure.
time, but for the most part, it's sort of a cattails reeds sort of bird walking along the edges of a vegetation lined pond,
And
kind of
you also
hiding
see
in
them
the
up in the
weeds.
bushes. They
Yeah,
climb.
well, they've got those super long toes. They're good for
Yep.
grasping.
Yeah, and there's also a size and bulk difference here too. I mean, a purple
Difficult thing
gallinule
to
is
determine in a single photo,
kind
but
of a
yes.
slim bird with a slim bill. Gray-headed swamphen is a big chunky bird with a big chunky bill and
Hmm.
kind of a mean demeanor.
And we only say that because they are an invasive exotic species in Florida. I do have a question for you, Greg. Is it gray-headed swamp-hen on the ABA checklist?
It
I want to
is.
say I don't think it is. It did we change it recently?
Yeah,
I know one of the issues with that bird was that it used to be
purple
purple
swamphen.
swamp-hen,
Right.
and that was recently split by a lot of taxonomic authorities in
Right.
Asia into gray-headed and purple-headed swamp hen. And the problem was when you've got an invasive exotic or population, um, both of them were in Florida for a very, very long time, and I think there are
Yeah.
still quite a few purple-headed swamp hens there. Whether or not they have taken off like the gray-headeds have, I'm not entirely sure. I would think someone from Florida would
The
be
only
able
one
to
on
let
the
me know
ABA
that.
checklist is gray-headed swamphen.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the one that is established, whereas
Right.
purple-headed is not established. Uh, Maybe not yet, maybe not ever. Um, but yeah, they're considered separate species now, and I know
Yeah.
that was a potential problem because what happens when an old world species gets split, and that species is exotic in New World? Good
Yeah.
question.
Like, did
Lynn
that happen?
asks.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Lynn asks, were they introduced by humans or were they natural vagrancy that became established? As with most Florida birds, they were introduced by humans.
Yeah. There's
Quite
really
common.
not. There's not very many natural vagrants that have become established um, in the ABA area. I mean, lesser blackback gull is one.
Cattle egret.
Cattle egret is another. Um, we weren't
Depends on
around
how
to
far you
really
want to go back.
document it, but glossy ibis is
Yeah.
another. Um, what else? Oh, interestingly enough, Eurasian collared dove.
Mm.
So I believe the first Eurasian collared doves came from the Caribbean and spread up through Florida and have taken over most of the United States and southern Canada.
Yeah. They're still quite scarce down here in the southeast, but we're pretty much the only place left. Chrissy Esmahan asks, where do they come from? Gray-headed swamp hen, South Asia, essentially.
Yeah,
I think there might be some in Africa as well.
I think so too. Well, I'm not since the split. I'm not sure where that is.
You know what? I can look. Gray-headed swamp hen. Thank you, eBird. Yeah, South Asia,
Yeah.
the Indian subcontinent in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
So keep an eye out for big purple birds in Florida. I actually have gone and looked for gray-headed swamp hen and have not seen it yet.
I
don't know
have
whether
not
I was
either.
in Florida the wrong time of year or whatever, but I actually went out specifically to look for vagrants. I went with Mark and Mark. Oh my God, Mark. I can't believe I can't remember Eliana. They took me out to
Oh yeah, yeah.
when I had a long layover
Birding by
coming back
bus.
from Panama. Yeah, the birding by bus people. Great folks. And they took me out on an afternoon to look for invasive exotics in Miami. And we did not find the gray-headed swamp hens. We didn't look too hard for them, but we did get the bulbuls and a couple parrots and common myna and stuff like that. So that was fun.
Cool. Yeah. So this one is from Minnesota, and this generated a lot of discussion.
Yeah, it's an interesting angle. Say that.
Well, yeah, and not just in what's this bird, but it was tossed around in a few other places, and it's one of those things where well, first of all, I mean the photo leaves a little bit to be desired, but I mean as far as I'm concerned, I can tell immediately what this is, and I'm not in the slightest bit hesitant about.
So it's got a big old head, big old
Yeah,
soup can head. You can't really see the bill. It looks like it's got a facial disc. I mean, it's an owl,
it's
but
a
which owl?
big chunky owl sitting on a lamppost during the day. Now,
Yep.
that that
Are those the lampposts at the Minneapolis airport? They
I
sort
don't
of
know.
look like it.
It
I
might
think
be,
I've seen this scene many times.
but um, that I mean, regardless of what the bird, like, even if you just had a silhouette of an earless, hornless owl sitting on a lamppost, but especially during the day, Tom, mottled owl, um, that sitting on a lamppost, a street lamp during the day, just screams snowy owl. I mean,
Yeah.
that is just what they do. And but there was a lot of discussion. A lot of people thought this bird looked like a barn owl, and I'll be honest, I don't see it. But
I can kind of see it. I also think short-eared owl is on the possibility. Well, no, it's not. Short-eared owl is out because the face is way too plain. Short-eared owl
yes,
has like an
it
actual
doesn't have a
really,
white face. There's really
yeah, and
only
it's got a
two of our owls.
I mean, it could be
that are-
palish, but
yeah,
it's got like mascara marks under its eye and stuff. There's a
right.
lot going on in a short-eared owl face. But barn owl is not a terrible shout because they can be awfully pale sometimes, especially the further north you go.
Absolutely.
But
But that's the further north part is important, though.
yeah,
Because, barn owl, a few things about barn owls. They're small, light birds. They feed on mice and
yeah,
voles.
they're surprisingly small.
They are they migrate down the Chicago lakefront in very small numbers, and quite often we find their remains in places like Montrose Beach, where the peregrines have picked them off as they're coming in off the lake in the morning. And I mention that because they don't sit in the open during the day, ever.
No, because they
Great-
get eaten. Yeah.
Exactly. Great horned owls, peregrine falcons, red-tailed hawks. I mean, almost anything that can catch a barn owl will try and will eat it. And they just don't sit out in the day at all. They are crepuscular at best, but they are one of our more nocturnal owls. They're very slight-bodied. They have long legs, long wings. And lastly, Minnesota in the winter is not the place for a barn owl.
A little
They
cold.
they get up there in the summer a little bit, but they move south in the winter because they just can't handle the cold. So I mean, all of that circumstantial evidence points to snowy owl. But the just the bulk and the wings, the wings being the same length as the tail, and the bulk of the bird, and the white face without any, it's mostly got a white head with a pure white face. All of that just screams snowy owl.
Yeah. And I think people sometimes, we think of owls because the owls that we're familiar with, like barn for some, it sometimes are actually quite slight. Snowy owl is an absolute bruiser. Like, it is a big owl. It is the size of a great horned owl. It is.
It's actually a little
I
bigger.
think it's more massive. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was gonna say, like, its
Heavier.
body size is bigger. Head is probably bigger. This is an owl that can handle itself in a lot of conditions, as you might expect. And
a couple of anecdotal things. Again, sort of circumstantial evidence. As I said, barn owl they feed on mice and voles. While snowy owls are out on the ice ripping ducks in half. They are just
gulls,
big
ducks.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. They're tough birds, and they hate peregrine falcons too. They will fight back against peregrine falcons. That is
They
one of
will. If
nature's
you
oldest
remember that.
rivalries.
You remember that post
I remember that
viral on
sequence
the
of
old
photos.
North American birding blog that I used to run called it was called When a Snowy Met the Locals, and it was out at McCormick Place in Chicago, and it was a snowy owl out there, and a peregrine came by and buzzed it, and the snowy owl fought back and fought off the peregrine. But barn owl, that would be done in first pass. It would be all over. Mia McPherson says, I rescued a barn owl hung up on a fence in Montana, and when I was holding it, it felt like holding a robin. Yeah,
Yeah, barn owl.
they are
Yeah.
very slight birds.
Yeah. We had this discussion one time, I forget where, about birds that seem like they are bigger than you imagine when you see them, and birds that seem like they're smaller than you imagine when you see them.
Yeah.
And sort of the classic one that bird is smaller than you imagine is least bittern, which is just incredibly tiny bird that
Oh,
you
yeah.
would not expect to be as small. Barn owl is one of those birds too, because it's such, like, culturally speaking, I think it's like a massive, like, it's very popular. A lot of people know it. It's found around the world. Well, I mean, they recently split them, but barn owls are found all around the world, and they've kind of found their way into mythology and culture in a lot of different places. And so they kind of have this big aura, but for the most part, they're actually quite tiny little owls. I'm always
Yeah,
surprised
and
when I see one how small it is.
so I was just checking something here just to put it into perspective.
They're big. They're all wings.
Wait,
Like they're all wing.
yes, they are. But when we
Yeah.
think of big owls in particular, we think of great gray, which is truly huge. It's 27 inches long. Putting that into perspective, snowy owl is 23. Great horned owl is 22. So great gray owl is, when you look at it, it's a big bird, but it's all feathers.
Yeah.
A great gray owl weighs 2.25 pounds. A snowy owl weighs 4 pounds, and a barn owl weighs 1 pound. I mean, there's really a huge difference there.
They're all feathers.
They're all feathers. All righty. We got a little hawk. Or is it a parrot?
Yeah, interesting bill on this bird. Yeah, parrot is the first thing that sort of, maybe appropriately comes to mind here. But even a parrot would not have a bill like this. This seems awfully long. Parrot is sort of a flat-fronted bill instead of.
It's one of the
out
Galapagos
like that for the most
finches.
part. Yeah, maybe it's that too. Not in Huntley, Illinois.
That's true.
Yeah, this is kind of an all-around kind of brownish bird. Whenever I see, I mean, I think it's important for these birds, for which the bill is got some sort of abnormal growth going on, which is what I believe is going on here.
Yes.
If you're trying to identify it, to take the bill away, remove the bill from this identification, and I think it's not a terribly difficult ID. But we tend to look for unusual things, and maybe that's what makes a rare bird stand out in a flock of common birds. But sometimes you got to know how far to take that, and there's nothing about this bird's bill that doesn't make me think this is an abnormality, a mutation, a growth problem, whatever, as opposed to something that is normal. Because I don't think you're going to find anything like this in your field guide if you're looking for the bill.
No. And, as you said, Nate, bill deformities happen, and there are some studies taking place, especially in Alaska, where a lot of chickadees have deformed bills. But we do see birds with deformed bills, and they throw people off, especially brown. It's funny. I was looking at pictures of vagrant thrashers for some project or other that I was working on. And it just seemed to me, and I didn't really do any research or actual study, but just, again, anecdotally, just looking at them, it seemed that a lot of the vagrant thrashers, sage and curve-billed in particular, had bill deformities.
Yeah, it is interesting. I don't know. It does feel anecdotal, but I can add a couple other anecdotes. There was something in my local Carolinas Facebook group, maybe a month or so ago, maybe 6 weeks, where a brown thrasher, someone had taken a photo on one of those feeder cams of a brown thrasher that came to a feeder, and it had an abnormally long bill. I don't know whether thrashers are particularly prone to that sort of thing. I have no idea, but it is interesting.
But yeah, bill deformities.
So what is this bird? Yeah.
bill deformities happen here. We have an avocet nuthatch and a cross-billed chickadee, just to give an idea of the scope of things that can happen. But this bird is a young male brown-headed cowbird, and again, as you said, Nate, if you take away the bill, everything else just fits perfectly for a young male brown-headed cowbird.
We're looking at
And
a stocky bird that's kind of grayish brown all over. We don't have too many of those birds in North America that are sort of, just grayish brown without any sort of streaking or patterning or anything like
yeah,
that. And this is a bird that I think throws people off a lot of times because it is so unpatterned and so plain. But that kind of dingy brownish, dusty brown all over is cowbird, is young cowbird. Um, yeah,
yeah.
interesting
And the white
deformities there.
throat is one of the
Yeah,
only
the white
like
throat. You can see
things that stands out is the whitish throat, which as the bird ages, it will lose and it will get the glossy black and brown of the adult. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
this is
interesting
a
to note on these deformities, especially in particular that nuthatch. A lot of times, birds that have these sort of bill deformities can look awfully ratty too. In addition,
yeah,
because you can't, take care of their feathers. With that bill, that's an important part of preening and bathing and
absolutely,
whatnot for birds is keeping those feathers in good working order, keeping the barbules all kind of neatly aligned. A lot of birds that have these abnormalities can't do that, and they look awfully disheveled frequently because of that, even if they are otherwise reasonably healthy.
absolutely, absolutely.
It's surprising how well birds can manage with those sort of bill deformities. You see, like birds that come back to feeders multiple years, or birds that are clearly in an adult plumage as opposed to a juvenile plumage.
Right.
Suggesting that they have survived with that abnormality for at least 2 years. The life finds a way, as Ian Malcolm says.
As yes.
Finds a
All
way.
right. Waldorf, Maryland. Got a little brown streaky bird on
Little
the
brown
ground. Looks like it might be
Yeah.
in the snow picking up something. Seeds,
Mhm.
maybe. Little brown streaky bird on the ground under a feeder, or I mean, that's what it looks like. Who knows what the photo leaves a lot to be desired. You can't.
There's a lot that we can't see in this
There's
photo,
a lot
namely
we
the
cannot
bill.
see. The bill, yeah, the bill looks like it's missing.
Yeah,
It could just be that it
it's
was a
not.
slow shutter speed and the bird was moving towards the camera.
It's more likely.
But we can certainly see enough to identify this bird. I mean, the things that stand out to me are the white throat and what appears to be a white, like the whole underside is just white.
Yeah, not a lot there.
And that big white kind of flash in the wing. Actually, there's two
Yeah,
of them.
big white stripe, and also the head looks awfully large. Like this bird looks kind of malproportioned, and so when I think of things like sparrows or red-winged blackbird or other birds that might kind of be foraging underneath a feeder in the snow, I'm typically thinking of birds with kind of long, strong legs, kind of a large body, a smaller head. Maybe a longer tail, like birds that look like they spend a lot of time on the ground. This thing looks weird on the ground, and maybe that's because I know what this
It
bird is,
does.
and I not usually see this bird on the ground. But it doesn't look like a bird that is evolved to search for food, pick through food in the grass and in the snow. It's shaped weird for a bird that's spending a lot of time on the ground.
I would agree. So let's and Len Kopka notes, look at the barbs on the tail, and he's talking about
Sure, they're there. Yeah.
the pointed tips of the individual tail feathers, which we see on a lot of woodpeckers, or pretty much all woodpeckers, at least our woodpeckers. So yeah, let's look at stuff that you see on the ground that's all streaky in Maryland, and we've got a bunch of choices, but really only one fits.
Yeah, I think as you pointed out, Greg, it's the appearance of a bright white underparts from the chin all the way kind of underneath the wing there that really makes this bird, stand out a little bit. It's not a sparrow, because all sparrows are sort of, if not patterned underneath, they are typically not bright white underneath.
Right.
A red-winged blackbird is streaky all over, so it's definitely not that. Wren, it's got too much going on for a wren. Wrens tend to be relatively, even kind of our well-marked wrens, like the marsh wren that you've pointed out here, tend to have
Yeah.
large blocks of kind of plain brown buff on the back. It's an interesting bird.
The bird
and,
at the top
and no
right.
no wing bars on them. No wing bars
Yeah,
on
the
wren.
bird at the top right is a pine siskin. It looks like I left the
Mm-hmm.
label off there when I was creating the slide. But But yes, that's a pine siskin, and of all of them, the pine siskin has the most
Closest.
similar
Yeah.
wing pattern.
Yeah.
And it's certainly all streaky, but it's all streaky all over the place,
Mhm.
and is definitely not white on the throat. Really, wrens are the only choice that would have white on the throat. And I threw red-winged blackbird in there because, we're talking about streaky things that are found on the ground, maybe under a feeder or around the base of a tree near a
Yeah,
feeder.
red-winged blackbird is kind of the classic "what's this bird." We
It
get that
is.
bird in all sorts of different configurations and all types of year. Those streaky red-winged blackbirds always tend to throw people because I think that the males look so different from the females, and you don't tend to think that if you see kind of a streaky bird walking underneath the feeder that you need to look in the blackbirds and orioles and not in the sparrows. So people get
Exactly.
confused that way.
And as the males go from their first year plumage or first summer plumage into adult plumage over the winter, they become striking. I mean, they're almost black with kind of an orange
Yeah,
streaking and all over the
those
place.
buffy tips, those kind of russet
Yeah,
tips.
and the females get orangish throats.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget. Not long after we moved into this house, and I put up a feeder, and I was, keeping track of the birds at the feeder, and there was a female red-winged blackbird walking around under the feeder, and it just startled the heck out of me because where I live, blackbirds don't land. I've seen, except for grackles,
Fly over in large flocks. Yeah,
they fly over in large flocks, but they do not land. Except maybe momentarily in the top of a tree, but that's it. I live in a very urban area with houses tightly packed together, and really no red-winged blackbird, and certainly no other blackbird habitat. So just the idea of a blackbird walking around under my feeder that wasn't a grackle, just like it didn't compute for a half a second. And that's, as you said, that is one of the most frequently asked about birds and what's this bird is a female or young male red-winged blackbird away from a marsh or away from where it's expected to be, especially in the wintertime. And
but anyway, this bird is a brown creeper.
This bird
and
is
this
a brown
not
creeper.
typically how you encounter brown creepers. Brown creepers sort of famously this cryptic pattern on the side of a tree. You hear that super high pitched call, and you kind of look around and you see them kind of circling as they make their way up the tree, reach the top, fly down to the bottom. But that cryptic pattern makes them frequently very, very difficult to see. But it's why it's white on the underparts too. This is a bird that spends most of its day pressed very tightly up against a tree trunk. So it's white. There's no need for it to be anything else because you don't see it. Predators don't see it. They're looking at the piece of moss or the piece of bark that's moving. But yeah, it's not a bird that you see on the ground all that often. And so you can see why someone would be confused if this thing was hopping around underneath their feeder. I can't imagine it was doing that for long.
No, and I would
probably hop back up to the safety of a tree trunk quite quickly.
One of the things we talk a lot about birding by impression. And one of the things about brown creeper, as you said, Nate, they hug the tree like a woodpecker, but even tighter. And they really blend into the bark, and they move up the tree in a spiral, and they go up to a certain height, and then they'll fly to the next tree, and they'll fly to the base of it, and then spiral up, and just that's how they move. And when you're walking through the woods and you see a bird like just whoop, land down at the base of a tree, you'll get a strong impression that okay, that's a creeper. And I will bet this bird is at the base of a tree. And like it landed at on the left there, I'll bet that's the base of a tree. And it's just picking around on the ground right at the very base of the tree.
Sarah Coffey says it's a super tiny bird in the photo. The dirt specks look large next to it. Yes, it is a very small bird.
Yes. Absolutely.
One of our smallest, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean it's kinglet sized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a little longer and slimmer, but it's kinglet sized. So
Common loon.
that is that is our that is our birds for today. We've got a few minutes left, so if you guys want to talk to us about anything, we want to remind you that the ABA is a membership organization, and programs like this and Nate's excellent podcast, the American Birding Podcast, and their magazines and everything that we do is funded through membership. And you guys can go to aba.org/join, or just go to aba.org and smash the join button. We would love to have you join the club. We have I think most people now have seen our 2025 Bird of the Year, Common Loon. This is I think one of the most fun parts of the Bird of the Year program for me is all the different art. Like, if you look back through, I think it's now 13 years that we've been doing this.
It's been a while.
Just amazing art. And the more we do it, the better it gets.
Yeah, absolutely. A common loon is a fun one too, just because there's so much. I mean, everyone loves the loon. And we've already had, people getting really into it. Even Minnesota Senator, what's her name? Amy
Klobuchar.
Amy Klobuchar noted us on Blue Sky that she's very proud of Minnesota's loons, and they are. Yeah, she gave a like to it, or reposted, or whatever the term is for on Blue Sky. Donna Shulman asks, "Where's the poster?" We're working on that, Donna.
Yes.
Chris Ortega says, "Congrats, Nate, for getting through winter. What's this bird without any gulls?" I feel like that is Greg's responsibility there. Not putting any gulls up there.
Yeah, and I first of all, I know your reaction to gulls. So
look, I'll do it. I
tend to keep it. I tend to keep it
gulls and practicing.
I tend to keep it low. But just before we get off that Blue Sky comment you made, ABA is on Blue Sky, and we are ababirds.bluesky.bsky.social. Come check it out. It is Blue Sky. I'm digging Blue Sky. It's
all right. I'm a little disappointed that I wasn't able to nab the @ABA handle like we did on Twitter, which was pretty wild. David Hartley, our colleague, was able to get on in the early days of Twitter and steal @ABA away from like the American Bar Association and the American Booksellers Association and the American Beverage Association and the all the other ABAs that are out there. Yeah, we got that. So I was a little bit sad that we did not get it this time. Some random dude had it. I thought maybe one of the organizations would have gotten it, but they didn't. It was some random dude from, I don't know, some other, not American, or Canadian or English speaking, as far as I can tell. But we did not get it. But we'll be ABA birds to remind you that ABA does birds more than we do law and beverages and books and all the other Bs. Buses, the American Bus Association.
Yeah, American Bus Association. And we haven't had really too many wrong ABAs. Of course, we're really not doing anything on the site formerly known as Twitter anymore. But it was fun when we used to get people thinking they were conversing with the American Bar Association and tagging us. So we've got just a couple of minutes left here. If you guys have anything you want to say, anything you'd like to bring up, any questions for us, we will do our best to get to it. And there's nothing in the way now. So
Newbie Thomas says they wish they were called loons and not divers in the UK. Take that up with some UK birders. They can be loons over there too. I thought we could compromise and make them like Great Northern Loon. Because I like the Great Northern. I think that's a pretty nice descriptor. It's better than common.
I do like that.
Great Northern Loon. Maybe we can compromise.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'll say that yellow-billed loon and white-billed diver.
White-billed diver.
I kind of like white-billed diver.
Intrepid Blonde asks, what do we know about the bird life in Altadena and Pacific Palisades? Any reports? Hard to tell what's going to happen there. I will send you to Steve Hampton, who's a friend of the ABA, and a Bay Area birder who wrote a really nice thing on his Substack, on his newsletter, about how the fires might impact bird populations in California. It's interesting because certainly those birds in Southern California did evolve with regular fire. Certainly not
Absolutely.
fire that is as intense as the wildfires that they have seen this year, but fire in general, so they can handle it to some extent. So it's interesting to see what will happen. He did mention that he had seen some birds that were more common further south showing up at his feeder, and we did do a podcast episode I want to say maybe 2 years ago with a researcher from UCLA named Olivia Sanderfoot, who does research on birds and smoke, the impacts of smoke
Yeah.
on birds, what happens to them, because of course birds have very complex respiratory systems, and so smoke particles, that sort of thing, certainly causes problems with us. They can cause bigger problems for birds, but it's hard to tell, and I think it's only going to be birders who are picking up the pieces in those places and putting stuff into eBird and documenting the changes in their local bird life, that is going to tell us this story, at least in terms of birds.
Yeah, and speaking of fire and birding, this is like taking a big hop over in a different direction, but where you see controlled burns, or
Oh yeah.
in places like Texas and Florida, sugarcane burns, or other crop field burns, hawks work the edges of the burns because things like rabbits and other animals are running away from the fire and they're out exposed.
Mm-hmm.
And the hawks will work the edges of the fire. And in South Texas, I remember when we were trying to find me a lifer white-tailed hawk.
Yeah,
We were driving along and somebody spotted a big plume of smoke, and we're like, go over there. That's where the white-tailed hawks are. We drove over there. There were 3 white-tailed hawks flying around in the smoke. And I remember once finding a Swainson's hawk in Illinois working a prairie burn in early spring, like March or April.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, birds are nothing but adaptive. They move. They take advantage of environmental situations faster than almost anything.
Yeah, because they are so mobile. Yep.
Yes.
Jimbo C has any missing birds for you this winter? All of them.
All of
the
them.
Birds are missing for me this
Yeah,
winter.
I've spent more time behind my desk this winter than
it
I can
stinks.
remember.
Yeah, you got to get out. Yeah. Well, I think we've come up to 2 o'clock.
I
We'll do that.
think
We'll
so.
do a quick little goodbye here. Thanks everybody. We'll be back in a couple weeks to talk birds and bird watching with all y'all. Feel free to check out the ABA if you're not a member. ABA.org/join. Join our Facebook groups. What's This Bird? If you'd like. They are great communities, and we definitely need more people who are interested in helping folks identify birds. It is very satisfying to help folks get to an identification and help them put a name to the bird that is in their backyard or wherever. And we will be back in a couple weeks. ABA.org/community. Check that out as well.
For ABA members, check out ABA Community.
ABA members, absolutely. And we will see you next time. And yeah, that's all I got. See you, Greg. See you, everybody.
Same here. See you guys.
Adios.